Good morning, good evening, depending on when you're listening. Today, I invite you to another episode of the series. This time, we'll move to Mauritius, a paradise island that most people probably associate with white sand and turquoise water. But in this story, it became the backdrop of a tragedy. Has any one of you ever been to this island? What were your impressions? Did you feel safe there? Or perhaps quite the opposite? Let me know in the comments. As always, I thank you for all your activity and support on YouTube. This really means a lot to me and allows me to continue developing this podcast. And now, I invite you to listen to today's story. Mauritius is a small island in the Indian Ocean, where the sun shines most of the year and the beaches look like postcards. Crowds of tourists dreaming of vacations in a tropical paradise flock here every year. But Mauritius is not just beaches. You just need to move inland to find yourself in Black River National Park, full of dense rainforests, waterfalls, and winding trekking trails. From a bird's eye view, you can even see the famous underwater waterfall, an optical illusion that makes the ocean look as if it's suddenly collapsing into the depths. This country, located in the Mascarene archipelago, has just over 1 million inhabitants. They speak Creole, French, and English here, and tourism is the backbone of the economy. Mauritius has a complicated colonial history. It was in the hands of the Portuguese, Dutch, French, and British. Today, it is considered one of the most stable countries in Africa. It gained independence in 1968, and since 1992 has been a republic within the Commonwealth. For the world, Mauritius is a paradise corner, a place of rest and carefree living. But in January 2011, this image was brutally disturbed when a tragedy occurred in a luxury hotel on the island. Michaela McAreavey, née Hart, was born on December 31st, 1983, in Glen, in County Tyrone, in Northern Ireland. She was the daughter of Marianne and Mickey Hart, a man practically everyone in Northern Ireland knew. Mickey had managed a Gaelic football team for years and over time became one of the most titled managers in the history of this sport. If you don't know what Gaelic football involves, let me explain. It's Ireland's national sport, a team game that looks like a combination of soccer, rugby, and Australian football. 15 players play on the field, and the goal is to score points by shooting the ball into a goal with a net or over the crossbar between the posts. You can kick the ball, pass it by hand, or bounce it, but you have to dribble it if you run for more than 4 steps. What's important for the Irish is that this is more than sport. It's an element of culture and local identity around which community is built. Matches fill stadiums with tens of thousands of people, and the best players or coaches become recognizable figures. No wonder Mickey Hart had iconic status, and the whole family basically lived in this world. Michaela grew up in the shadow of stadiums and locker rooms. She had a special bond with her father and was with him in the most important moments, including at Croke Park in Dublin, where the Tyrone team won the Irish Championship in 2003, 2005, and 2008. But sport was not Michaela's only interest. At the age of 20, she competed in a beauty contest and became the Ulster Rose, gaining the reputation of a girl full of grace. On a daily basis, she was a modest and deeply religious Catholic. She studied the Irish language and attended religion classes. She also participated in a club whose goal was to encourage students to live without alcohol. She had the reputation of being a warm, calm person, and at the same time, full of energy and passion. Thanks to her recognizable father, she too began appearing in the media, in television programs, and giving interviews. But she wasn't just Mickey's daughter. She built her own authority as a teacher, activist, and woman who earned enormous respect. Eventually, she met John McAreavey, an accountant and active Gaelic football player who was captain of his club. From the beginning, they seemed perfectly matched. They met at university in 2005 and had been a couple ever since. People around them said their bond was strong, sincere, and natural. They married on December 30th, 2010, the day before Michaela's 27th birthday. The ceremony was full of emotion, celebrated among family and closest friends. For Michaela, it was the beginning of a new chapter she had dreamed of for a long time. After the wedding came time for the honeymoon. The young couple decided to spend a month on it, choosing Dubai and Mauritius. They spent the first part in Dubai and decided to spend the remaining time in 2 hotels on the African island, which was very popular among Irish newlyweds at that time. They landed on the island on January 8th, 2011. Their first stop was the luxury Legends Hotel, a 5-star resort located in a fishing village on the northeast of the island. It was the most frequently chosen place among Irish couples planning their honeymoon. There was a private beach, tropical gardens, pools, and a view of the Indian Ocean. Their stay included an all-inclusive package, but when checking in, John asked if they could get a better room since this was their honeymoon. A deluxe room was available, and the staff agreed to upgrade them. The new room was more luxurious, located closer to the beach and restaurant, perfect for their special trip. The next day, the couple enjoyed the island's charms. They signed up for spa treatments and planned quiet days, full of rest and celebrating their fresh marriage. January 10th was already their 3rd day of stay. The weather was beautiful. Thermometers showed almost 30 degrees. In the morning, they ate breakfast together. Then John took advantage of a free golf lesson included in the hotel package, while Michaela rested by the pool and sunbathed. They met for lunch at the Banana restaurant. After the meal, the couple decided to have tea. Michaela remembered that there was a box of chocolates waiting in their room, a welcome gift they had received. Since the room was nearby, she told John she would be right back. He stayed in the restaurant, took some photos, watched a short video, and waited for his wife. However, the minutes passed, 5, 10, 15, and Michaela wasn't coming back. John tried to stay calm, but when half an hour passed, he felt real anxiety. Finally, he decided to check what was happening. He went to their room 1025 and knocked. Silence answered him. He tried again. No answer. But then he heard a quiet sound of water coming from inside. The problem was that he didn't have the key with him. He had left it earlier by the pool. So he went back to reception and asked for a replacement card. One of the employees accompanied him back. When John opened the door, the sound of water became clearer. He went inside and faced the worst he could see. Michaela was lying in a bathtub full of water, showing no signs of life. It was about 3 p.m. John didn't hesitate, immediately ran to his wife and pulled her out. He tried to resuscitate her, begged her to wake up, but her lips were already blue, and there were strange marks on her neck. He realized that Michaela was dead. Only later would investigators establish that the woman's body was thrown into the bathtub after she was strangled, and the water was left running to fake drowning. What happened immediately after discovering Michaela's body left a permanent mark on the entire investigation. Instead of quick and professional action, complete chaos reigned. Police appeared only after more than half an hour from the report, and then another hour passed before anyone cordoned off room 1025. During this time, dozens of people passed through the crime scene. Hotel employees, paramedics, and even ordinary guests who looked in out of curiosity. This caused the evidence to be contaminated. The fact that Michaela's body was moved from the bathroom to the corridor made securing traces practically impossible. When police finally examined the scene, they initially thought it was an unfortunate drowning, but one look was enough to become suspicious. The room was in disarray, and injuries on the body indicated something much more serious. The autopsy confirmed their suspicions. Michaela had bruises and abrasions around her neck, and a plastic bag had been placed over her head. She was strangled with it. Mauritius is a country that lives from tourism. The murder of a young woman in a 5-star hotel was a blow to its reputation. The police wanted to act quickly. Already the day after the tragedy, the first arrests were announced, but the way the investigation was conducted raised doubts from the beginning. Officers entered the room without protective suits, allowed others to trample over the crime scene, and decisions were made chaotically. All this was also extremely difficult for John. His nightmare didn't end when he found his wife's body. A few hours later, he himself ended up in jail. On the very day of her murder, he was handcuffed, stripped, and locked in a police interrogation room for 5 hours. Plunged in despair, he heard from one of the officers words that still shock today. "Why are you crying? You're young. You'll find yourself another wife." Only before midnight was John released. Police ultimately ruled him out as a suspect because witnesses confirmed that at the time of the murder, he was in the hotel restaurant. But this whole situation was another blow for him. In addition to his unimaginable loss, he still had to face humiliation and callousness from local investigators. Police put forward the theory that Michaela was strangled because she walked in on burglars trying to rob their room. A key clue appeared in the electronic card system. It showed that on January 10th at 2:42 p.m., just 2 minutes before Michaela entered the room for chocolates, someone opened the door with a fake key card, one not officially issued by reception. This meant someone foreign could still be inside when Michaela entered. Despite all the chaos and errors in securing the crime scene, police needed only 1 day to identify the culprits. On January 11th, 3 Legends Hotel employees were detained. 32-year-old cleaner Avinash, his 42-year-old supervisor Sandip, and 33-year-old cleaner Raj, who had a bad reputation. He was known for using magnetic cards to illegally enter guests' rooms and rob them. Avinash and Sandip were charged with murder, and Raj with conspiracy. Police claimed that Michaela fought for her life, and fragments of skin found under her fingernails were supposed to confirm this. Initially, the case seemed decided, especially since Avinash confessed the very next day. However, he quickly retracted his testimony, explaining that it was forced from him. A week later, 2 security guards, Dasan and Sinan, were also arrested, but charges against both were ultimately dropped. Fingerprints found on the door belonged to Dasan, but he was the one who accompanied John when he entered the room, so this trace was considered irrelevant to the murder. Michaela's family was going through the worst moments. Her brother Mark flew to Mauritius, then returned to the family in Ireland, plunged in mourning. Mickey, Michaela's father, said it was their worst nightmare. Police presented their final theory of how the murder happened. According to investigators, while Michaela and John were drinking tea in the restaurant, the woman remembered the chocolates and went to room 1025, where she found thieves. They wanted to steal money from her purse, but small amounts so no one would notice. This type of thief supposedly always tried to take no more than £100 and never the entire contents. Police cited a written statement from one of the suspects who confessed but later retracted it. According to this version, when Michaela entered, Avinash was rummaging through her purse. She reacted sharply and asked what he was doing. Avinash pushed the woman, and at that moment, Sandeep grabbed her from behind. Michaela fought and cried, but they put a bag over her head and held it until she stopped moving. Then, they placed her body in the bathtub, turned on the water, and left. A reconstruction was carried out, after which one of the suspects retracted his words, claiming they were forced. At this stage, specific sanctions were discussed. If recognized as murder, the men could face up to 45 years in prison. If recognized as unintentional causing of death, it would be about 18 years. While the investigation was ongoing, Michaela's body was brought to Ireland. Her funeral took place on January 17th, exactly in the same church where the couple had married just a month earlier. Michaela was buried in her wedding dress, and crowds of mourners participated in her final farewell. The funeral was attended by the President of Ireland, the Prime Minister, and his deputy. Representatives of Gaelic football organizations also participated. People from various backgrounds came together that day to pay tribute to the young woman. Her death really shook the whole country. Many commentators emphasized that it was one of the most moving funeral ceremonies in Ireland in those years. Even in Mauritius, thousands of kilometers from her family home, a special mass was held. The island's authorities emphasized that this tragedy was a one-time incident, and murder in a hotel had happened there for the first time in history. The trial of Avinash and Sandeep began in May 2012, 16 months after Michaela's death. From the first day, it was clear this would be exceptional. The Supreme Court courtroom was packed with journalists and Michaela's loved ones, her parents, siblings, and John, who for the first time since the tragedy had to publicly tell about the worst day of his life. John testified in detail how after their lunch, Michaela went to the room and he waited in the restaurant. He remembered seeing Avinash twice within just a few minutes. When he couldn't get inside the room, he began desperately searching for his wife. He talked about the resuscitation attempts, about screaming for help. You could hear pain in his words, but also determination. His wife fell victim to a brutal crime, not an unfortunate accident. The prosecution accused Avinash and Sandeep of entering room 1025 with the intention of theft, and when Michaela caught them, they decided to silence her. According to this version, Avinash held the woman while Sandeep strangled her. The problem was that from the first days of the trial, doubts appeared whether this story had any solid foundation. The most controversy was aroused by Avinash's confession. Police claimed he described events in detail during interrogations, and his account was consistent with investigators' findings. But before the court, he firmly retracted his testimony, saying it was forced. He added that for 3 days he was brutally beaten, intimidated, and deprived of sleep, until he finally signed documents that were slipped to him. Doctors actually noted traces of injuries on his body, which gave grounds for recognizing that he could have been a victim of police violence. DNA tests became particularly important. Samples taken from the room and from Michaela's body were sent to a laboratory in Great Britain. Expert Susan Woodruff found that tests clearly showed no genetic traces of the accused. This was a key point. No hair, no saliva, no fingerprints. Nothing that could indicate the accused actually had physical contact with Michaela. The defense constantly reminded that there was no hard evidence in this case. They pointed out that the victim's purse was never examined for fingerprints or DNA. Since the prosecution claimed the accused tried to steal money from it, Some traces would have to remain there. Meanwhile, the purse never went to the laboratory. Another blow to the prosecution was that police didn't question witnesses who could have important information. Guests staying in rooms adjacent to Michaela and John's apartment were never asked if they heard screams or saw someone entering or leaving room 1025. This thread was simply ignored. The prosecution tried to save itself with witness Raj, the hotel employee earlier arrested on conspiracy charges who became a Crown witness. He testified that he saw Avinash and Sandip leaving room 1025 after hearing a woman scream. But the defense quickly pointed out errors. After analyzing his call history, it turned out that at exactly the same time, he was talking on the phone with his sister. His testimony was therefore considered contradictory and unreliable. The trial also turned into traumatic scenes. The defense went to extremes, including accusing John of sadism. They suggested that sadomasochistic practices took place in the hotel room, and Michaela could have died as a result of an unfortunate incident between the spouses. As evidence, they pointed to an erotic guide found in the room. John was devastated when he had to listen to these suggestions. Later, it was explained that the alleged manual was simply a free addition to a women's magazine. Police also presented surveillance footage that was supposed to prove John and Michaela were arguing in reception just before the murder. It quickly turned out the recording showed completely different people, German tourists who were never identified or questioned. All this together built an image of a trial that increasingly resembled a farce. Instead of getting closer to the truth, public hearings became a spectacle. The defense constantly pointed out that investigators simply chose two poor hotel employees as scapegoats to show that the case was solved and Mauritius was still safe for tourists. The trial that was supposed to last 2 weeks extended to almost 2 months. Ultimately, the jury had to decide on guilt based on circumstantial evidence, dubious testimony, and one confession whose circumstances raised serious objections. The judge addressed the jury directly. "It's not your role to worry about Mauritius's reputation. You must focus only on facts." And the facts were that there was no hard evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA. The only witness who theoretically saw the perpetrators didn't inspire confidence. The jury of 9 people, 6 men and 3 women, deliberated for only 2 hours. The decision was unanimous. Avinash and Sandip were found not guilty. Silence fell in the courtroom. For Michaela's family, this was an indescribable blow. In their statement, they said that after weeks of a shocking trial, they had no words to express the sense of devastation and emptiness they felt. Many observers called it a farce. The verdict meant no one would answer for Michaela's death. But Mauritius also received a permanent scratch on its reputation as a tourist paradise. The case caused such commotion that authorities decided to make law changes, including allowing suspects to be retried for the same crime, which was previously impossible. After the verdict, there was turmoil in Ireland. A campaign calling for a boycott of Mauritius began, which for an island living from tourism meant a serious threat. Irish MEPs supported these calls. Weeks later, another scandal broke out. In July 2012, the local Sunday Times published photos from the crime scene on the front page, including a photograph of Michaela's body. For the family, this was a blow below the belt. The Irish Prime Minister announced an official diplomatic protest against Mauritius. Police raided the editorial office and arrested the editor-in-chief, who was charged with insulting public and religious morality. He was eventually released on bail, but the case was never fully explained. Under pressure from scandals, in August 2012, Mauritius authorities appointed a new investigative team. They questioned dozens of witnesses, took hundreds of DNA samples, and tried to recreate the events step by step. They prepared a comprehensive report pointing to a potential suspect, but once again, the prosecution didn't proceed with a trial. The family didn't give up after the failed criminal trials. They filed a civil case against the Legends Hotel. After long negotiations, an agreement was reached in 2015. The settlement provided for payment of approximately £1.6 million in compensation. Shortly after, the Legends Hotel changed its name to Luxe Grand Garbe, a symbolic step to cut ties with the 2011 tragedy. Room 1025 also officially ceased to exist, reportedly renumbered to 1026. In 2015, John slowly began rebuilding his life. With Michaela's family's consent, he remarried Tara Brennan. He issued an emotional statement saying that regardless of how long it takes, 5, 10, 20 years, he will fight for justice for his wife. This would be his lifelong commitment. In 2017, 6 years after Michaela's death, John returned to Mauritius again, accompanied by her sister and brother. He announced he was offering a £50,000 reward for information leading to prosecution of his wife's murderer. This was an extraordinary step, rarely used on the island. During a special conference, he addressed residents directly, asking anyone with information to come forward. He said his determination, and Michaela's family's determination, remains unshakable. A new, experienced investigator was assigned to the case, Chief Inspector Daniel Monvoisin, known for solving difficult criminal cases. The media called him a bloodhound, a man who doesn't give up until bringing cases to an end. John also met with the Prime Minister of Mauritius and heard assurances that an elite task force was working on the case. Michaela's case hit headlines again in 2020, when the Mauritius government announced another investigation. Interestingly, a week after John publicly criticized a trade agreement between Mauritius and Liverpool Football Club. John wrote he was sick at the thought of this cooperation, pointing out that Mauritius couldn't ensure tourist safety and ignores murder victims. Days later, authorities announced an investigation was starting. However, this investigation led nowhere and was officially closed in December. In June 2021, another investigation was opened to analyze all evidence from 2011. Then dramatic events occurred. Raj, the key prosecution witness, disappeared and was found dead near his home. According to official findings, he hanged himself. Authorities ruled out third-party involvement, but this caused new doubts. Did someone want to silence him when the case was gaining momentum? In March 2022, an apparent breakthrough appeared. Former security guard Dasson was detained again, charged with conspiracy to steal relating to events from the day Michaela died. The charges concerned the magnetic card to room 1025 and the fact that someone opened the door 2 minutes before Michaela entered. Dasson claimed police forced testimony from him through torture. He was ultimately released on bail and charges were dropped. Police also detained Sandeep again, charging him with stealing magnetic cards, but this thread also led nowhere. In 2023, Michaela's case returned with a BBC documentary, Murder in Paradise. For the first time in years, Sandeep spoke publicly, firmly denying any connection to Michaela's death. When told some police still consider him a suspect, he replied he doesn't understand why they still harass him. Avinash also spoke, and the former deputy commissioner admitted that while torture had been used in history, he assured that in this specific case, police didn't use violence. In 2025, the retired police chief inspector who had been involved in 2017 decided to return to the case and went to Mauritius. His return was received as a signal that authorities want to give this case new priority. Michaela was an exceptional person. Daughter, wife, teacher who had her whole life ahead of her. Her death still causes commotion today because it happened when she should have been enjoying one of the most beautiful moments of her life. Maybe that's exactly why this case so deeply moved people around the world. After all, no one plans for their life to end on vacation. Up to this moment, as I'm recording in August 2025, no one guilty of Michaela's death has been found. I hope this will change. Thank you for listening, for your comments, thumbs up, subscriptions, and all forms of support. Thank you also for listening to the end. Take care of yourselves, especially if you have trips ahead. Take care of your safety and remember that haste can be a bad advisor. Better to return home safely. Until we hear from each other again.